Hey, welcome back to Louisville Live this morning. It is time for Dr. Eli, licensed marriage and family therapist. If you have issues in your relationship, in your marriage, maybe you're trying to work out a blended family, Dr. Eli can help you with all of these. We'll give you his contact information momentarily here, but Dr. Eli.
Stop.
What?
Conflict. See, there's conflict there.
Well,
You're supposed to stop.
I think I come up with my solution, Dr. Eli. I just kind of do this.
That's right.
I just give it one of these.
No,
and then
that was a conflict.
We could do a whole show on you guys' communication. Right. Maybe that's
we'll
later.
do that one day.
That's later.
Use you as an example.
But I got Dr. Becky Antle back with us today.
Dr. Becky, good to see you.
And we are going to talk about, in general, over the last couple months being on the show, we've talked about communication, what gets couples into trouble. We're going to give an example of what the big warning signs are today, and then talk about how to take a timeout. So,
well, the thing is escalation like it. A timeout? Okay, you want
to I want to talk about the timeouts, figure out how those work.
Okay, I'll have a timeout in 10 seconds. But the escalation, it's like an elevator going up. You have this, and when it gets to the top floor, it boils, it blows up. So where does this all start, Dr. Eli? How do you stop the tension and the escalation you're talking about?
Well, I think first is to know the big patterns, the big warning signs. And Becky will tell us a little bit about those right now. So there's about 4 or 5 big warning signs that gets couples into trouble. And you need to know what those are before you can do something different.
Okay.
Right. And you said escalation, and that's actually one of them. So we may start out in an argument arguing about, first someone forgot to take out the trash, and you end up talking about getting a divorce, and so it's escalated to that degree because you just keep piling on more and more. Another common communication problem is called withdrawal, and that's where one person disengages from the conflict. They may walk away, or they may just give you the silent treatment, and so they just completely check out.
Sometimes you just got to do that, don't you?
No,
well,
you really.
that's the problem.
Right. If you do that, it needs to be on purpose, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Is taking a timeout where you purposely walk away from a conflict because it is escalating, it's getting out of control, instead of withdrawing because you're refusing to communicate.
Right. There's nothing worse than when you withdraw, when you really want to talk to your partner and you shut down. And your partner pursues you. And that starts this really common pattern that we see a lot. When one person shuts down and the other person, the more the one partner shuts down, the more the other person pursues.
But you all make it sound so easy here. Someone, there's kids in the home. There's someone's late, someone didn't do this, and you're with them 24/7 or 20 years of marriage, 10 years of marriage. There's got to be some strong emotions. You just can't sit there and say, oh, let's talk about it, and it solves all. I mean, I know it does, but how do you know what I'm saying? Some people just got to say enough is enough.
I think what we work with couples on is how to have that conversation and how not to get carried away in the moment, especially if your kids are present, how to have a structured kind of conversation and to, again, buffer against these warning signs. You want to tell them about a couple of the other major ones?
Sure. Another one is that you attack the person instead of the problem. And so it may be that you're angry because someone forgot to pay the bills, but instead of talking about your frustration about not paying the bills, you're talking about what a lazy, irresponsible person your spouse is. Another one is assuming the worst of the person. So let's say one spouse is late for dinner. Assuming the worst is saying, well, they're late to dinner on purpose. They did this because they knew that the food would be cold and I would have to hold the kids up and this would make dinner and our evening more stressful, when in fact they may have gotten caught in traffic. And so we tend to assume the worst of others.
Okay.
Another one is called cross-complaining, and we see this a lot. You might have one issue, for example, someone forgot to pick up the kids or forgot their sporting event. But instead of focusing on that one problem, you start doing what we call kitchen sinking or cross-complaining, where you're bringing up lots and lots of history, lots of problems.
So you're bringing up things that happened 5 years ago versus staying in the moment, focused on the present.
You have your laundry list.
Then the profanity. The profanity, that's the last one.
Right. Well, when we say extreme language, we're not talking so much about profanity. We're talking more about saying things like, you always or you never. So, you always forget to pick the kids up. Well, that's probably not true. They probably have had quite a few times that they remembered to get the kids when they were supposed to.
You still have them.
You never take out the trash. Well, that's obviously not true, or your house would be filled with trash.
And if you use that extreme language, you always, you never, the first thing you're going to do is get defensive and want to defend your territory. And when we take a time out, I think that's what we'll move into now, talking about specific ways to take a time out. You have to know when your fuse is getting short, because if it blows, no matter how much you want to have a logical, calm conversation with your partner, you can't. Once you're physiologically flooded, either you or your partner, you can't do it. So the first step is to think of like a sports metaphor, a timeout. You say, look, I care about this relationship, but things are getting too escalated right now. Things are getting too hot. We need to take a time out. And how you should do that, Craig and Julie, is you should offer your partner your assurance you will come back. Because if you leave, as we said earlier, and you just bolt and you don't tell your partner you're coming back, they're either going to pursue you or they're going to get angry and waiting to get back at you when you come back.
Yeah, well, what if your partner doesn't understand what you're saying? What if they don't have the ability, or they don't have the ability to break it all down? Yeah, you go to counseling. But by that time, either a woman or a man, let's say whichever one's really heated, they just got to say, I'm getting out of this.
Well, and
a woman walks away, a man walks away and says, you don't get it. You never get it.
Yeah, and emotions really get in the way. And that's part of the benefit of taking a time out, because we have something called our smart brain and our angry brain. And when our emotions really get the best of us, we get emotionally flooded, we're not able to do that higher level processing where we can hear and understand what the other person is saying. But if we take this time out, our bodies calm down, and we can then access those higher parts of our brain where we can be more logical and more do more
so
of that
when you take the
solving.
time out, you should not be getting more fired up. You shouldn't go to your friend who doesn't like your partner and is telling you should leave, you should get out of that relationship. You should do something that's pretty much soothing for you. Whether some people go out and take a walk, they listen to music, they do something that's going to calm them down instead of getting them more fired up when they're gone. So when you come back, the whole key is to come back to your partner in a softer, calm way, and to acknowledge really what was going on in you. Like, instead of saying you always do this or you never do this, you have to really come in touch with the primary soft emotion. An example, rather than, some partner might say, oh, you always put work ahead of me, you're leaving me out. After a time out, the partner might come back and say something, I feel neglected when you put work or put your other commitments in front of me. And that's a softer way. It's an I statement. They can own it, and it's easier for the partner to hear that.
I want to say Dr. Becky Antle is here with Dr. Eli. Let's get some information about Dr. Eli, because both of them work, licensed marriage and family therapist. He's an assistant professor. She's at U of L. They just work hand in hand, and they provide a lot of counseling and therapy.
That's right. You can reach them at 749-8825. If you would like to bring your partner or your spouse in for some counseling, and as you said many times, Dr. Eli, the idea is to be proactive, to look for these warning signs that you talked about, Dr. Becky, before things get out of control and your emotions do get the best of you.
And we talked about 3 weeks ago when Becky was on here about these relationship classes. So things like this, how to fair fight, how to take a time out, that's what we cover in those. You can check our website, give me a call if you want to know more about that.
And if you don't know if you have the money and can't afford this, call Dr. Eli. He will work with you, and his staff will work with you on getting that help. We'll be right back with more of Louisville Live this morning.